Thank you very much for inviting me here. Before I start, I want to. It's good to follow an anthropologist's talk because many years ago at UC Davis, there's an anthropologist who told me about her observation of how people from different cultures would give a talk. And she said, when American starts a talk, he or she always tells a joke. And when a Chinese starts a talk, and he or she always apologizes. But I'm a Chinese Canadian, so I have to apologize about my joke. So here's my joke. You might have heard before. So, oops, let's see. Oh, sorry guys. So really have to apologize. So this is Mr. Messina, a friend of mine. He's a elementary school principal. He got a phone call one day. The caller says, Mr. Messina, my son Johnny will not come to school today because he's sick. So Mr. Messina asks, who am I speaking to, please? And the caller says, I am my father. And I really like this joke because it summarizes our common sense views about children and lying. Number one, we believe children only come to tell lies when they enter elementary school. Number two is that children, if they lie, they are terrible liars. And we adults can easily detect their lies. Number three, if a young child tells a lie at a very young age, something must be wrong with the child. The child may grow up to be a pathological liar, or a banker, or the president. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some evidence today about how children actually learn how to tell lies scientifically. But before I start, I would like to acknowledge the funding from NIH and the Canadian funding agencies, as well as the Chinese funding agencies. And also, I would like to tell you that the work I'm going to talk about today are not the work by myself, but it's really a teamwork. And I have been in luck to be able to have so many friends all over the world, and we have been collaborating for the last more than 20 years. And so what I'm going to do is, so about almost 25 years ago, my supervisor asked me, Kang, what are you going to do about your PhD thesis? So I thought, I'm going to ask a very simple question. That is how children learn to tell lies. I thought I would be finished with it in a few years and then move on. However, for the last almost 25 years, I'm stuck with this question. And my research agenda has been evolving over the last several decades. So the question I've been now asking is not only how children learn to tell lies, but also what are the cognitive, social, and neural qualities associated with lying in children, as well as in what kind of social contexts children will tell a lie, in what kind of social context they are more likely to tell the truth. And also, I want to look at what are the influences of culture in children's learning to tell lies. So we've been using various methods to elicit lying. But the one important thing in my research agenda, our research agenda, is that we do not instruct children to tell lies. We want children to lie out of their own volition. So we are looking at spontaneous lie telling from children due to various kinds of situations. So here's an example of how we do it. So we have been playing this kind of games with children all over the world. In this game, the children's task is to guess the numbers on the playing cards. And we tell them, if they guess numbers correctly, they're going to get a big prize. And in the middle of the game, we make an excuse and leave the room. But of course, we don't trust them very much, so we put hidden cameras everywhere, really everywhere. So on the ceiling, on the side, and under the table. So we just want to make sure we monitor every single move the child makes. And then, before we leave the room, we tell children, do not peek at the cards. So because the situation is so tempting, the majority of kids would peak within a few seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few examples of a similar task, and we have filmed with children everywhere. It's good enough. It's good enough. So the majority of kids would peak within about 5 minutes. Very, very few kids would peak beyond 15 seconds. 5 seconds, sorry. And very, very few kids would peak beyond 15 seconds. But the critical question really is not about whether or not they're peaking, but when we come back, when we ask children, when I was gone, did you peak? Would they tell the truth or would they lie? So this is a summary of what we found all over the world. So at 2 years of age, about 30% of the peakers would lie. And 70% of the peakers would tell the truth about their peaking. At 3 years of age, 50% would lie and 50% would tell the truth. At 4 years of age, more than 80% of them would lie. And after 4 years of age, the majority of kids would lie. So this is a very common developmental trajectory that you would observe almost everywhere in the world. And we've been, in the last few years, we've been really looking for what kind of factors would contribute to the younger kids' lie telling. In particular, why some of the young kids lie and some of the young kids would tell the truth about their cheating or their transgression. So we looked at gender. Does gender matter? Would boys and girls lie differently? It turns out there's no gender difference. Boys, girls learn how to tell lies exactly the same way. What about country? And it turns out no matter which country you're coming from, the way you learn to tell a lie is the same. And what about parenting style? Would permissive parents produce more liars than authoritarian parents? And it turns out that's not the case. Parenting styles do not impact on how children choose to tell a lie or tell the truth. And what about religion? And it turns out there's no difference whether or not you're from a religious family or a non-religious family. Children learn to tell lies exactly the same way. And after more than 10, 15 years work, finally we found two very consistent and robust factors and within the child that contributes to whether or not the child is going to lie or tell the truth. And one is, I call it the ingredients, key ingredients of lying. One is theory of mind, just Frances mentioned earlier. That is the ability to know that different people have different beliefs, different knowledge about the world. And what I know differs from what you know. And to lie, the basis of lying really is about this. It's about the reason I'm lying to you is because I know that you don't know what I know. Therefore, I can lie to you. Otherwise, why do you lie? And another key ingredient is executive function. I call it self-control. It's easier to understand for people who are not in our field. So that idea that for you to successfully lie, you have to control your verbal speech, your facial expression, your body language. So you have to control all these activities. On top of that, you also have to inhibit the truth and then come up with the alternative facts or world and to talk about that. And telling lie really involves heavy-duty executive functioning or heavy-duty self-control. And turns out these two cognitive factors are the robust and unique contributors to whether or not children are going to lie or tell you the truth. But probably to some of your surprise, that young children with better theory of mind understanding and executive functioning tell lies earlier and are more sophisticated liars. So I always tell parents, if you discover your child lying at 2 or 3 years of age, instead of being alarmed, you actually should celebrate. You should open up a bottle of champagne because your child actually has arrived not only at the typical developmental milestone, but your kids are actually performing better than the other kids because they have better theory of mind and better executive functioning. So lying gives you a test of whether or not your child is doing well. We have done quite many studies, and they are all correlational studies. So we just correlate lying with theory of mind and executive functioning. So we thought that's not enough. We want to know whether or not executive functioning and theory of mind understanding actually causes the child to tell lies. And in order to do that, we got ethics approval from the University of Toronto and our counterpart's university in China and did a training study. So in this training study, what we did was we give children a pre-test of theory of mind and executive functioning. And then we give them a lying test. So we recruit only 3-year-olds. We pre-screen to make sure they do not know how to tell lies. I will show you a video later on. So the task is very simple. So the experimenter here and the child is here. The child has to hide a candy that he or she likes in one of the 3 boxes. And then after the candy is hidden, the adult turns around and asks the child, where did you hide the candy? If the child tells the truth, the child loses the candy. If the child tells a lie, the child wins the candy. Okay, so it's a very simple game. And we call it the hide and seek game. So that's the pre-test. After pre-test, and then we give children 6 sessions of theory mind training. We teach them how to understand other people's mind that would have nothing to do with lying, but just about mind reading, about false beliefs, about different desires and knowledge and things like that. And then we give them a control training, which is also cognitively demanding task. We use actually a Piaget's conservation task that child has to learn as well. So the control condition involves no mind reading, but intensive cognitive training. And the theory mind training is really about understanding other people's mind. And after that, then we give them a post-test. And then afterwards, then what we did was we stopped training at this point, but we still follow them up with this game. We just want to track how long this training would wane off. And then we follow them up to about, this is the 21st day after the initial day, and then we stopped any kind of testing. Then we go back to their classroom and test them again. So this is 47 days after the pre-test. So that's how we did our study. And what we found was initially, of course, kids in the control and experimental conditions do not know how to tell lies. That's the condition we select them. And then afterwards, after 6 sessions of theory mind training, as you can tell, that those kids in the theory mind training condition now know how to lie consistently, and those kids in the control condition do not know as much. But then we follow them up after the training stopped. As you can see, the condition difference continues after between the 2 conditions. So that the children in the experimental condition are still more likely to tell lies and lie better than those kids in the control condition, even though these kids also picked up because they have played so many games with us and losing candies all the time. So eventually they actually caught up. But this effect, training effect, lasts for a long time, so 47 days. So this is the first evidence to show that the theory mind really is one of the causes of how children begin to tell lies. We have done a similar study by training children executive functioning, and we got exactly the same results, and the long-lasting results as well. So we believe the improvements in theory mind and the executive functioning cause lying in young children. And then we got a little bit carried away. And then a friend of mine at UC San Diego said, what about training children to lie? Would this help children's theory mind and executive functioning? And turns out, and that is the case. So when you're training children for 1 week about how to tell a lie using exactly that game, and then you measure children's executive functioning and theory of mind, and both these abilities are increased significantly. So lying actually has some kind of cognitive benefits as well. So now, what about social contexts? So there are many, many social contexts we can study. But one of the things we have been focusing on is how to create situations in the child's environment that would make the child more likely to tell the truth. So that's the main question we are asking. And so we were lucky to encounter two schools that had different practices about how to discipline children in West Africa. One school is we call punitive school that uses corporal punishment to discipline children about all sorts of transgressions, including hitting others to forgetting to bring pencil to the school. So the child gets beat up in the middle of the classroom every single day. It was a difficult study for our research assistants. And then the other school is a very typical school in both of our private schools in this West African country. That the other private school is using very North American method of disciplining children for transgressions, mainly scolding, and send the kids to the principal's office. As you can see that the two schools, kids, when they go through exactly the same paradigm that I showed you, that kids in the punitive school are lying significantly more than children in the non-punitive school. And number two is they actually lie better. The 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds are actually lie far better than the children in the non-punitive school. They are more or less like a liar that you would find in China, in Canada, or in the United States at 7 years of age. So corporal punishment does not promote true honesty, but rather promoting lying. And what about moral discussion? So we've done a series of studies about this. So let me give you an example. So in this study, the control condition, these are 5-year-olds. So the control condition involves no moral discussion. So basically, we leave the child in the room. The child peeks at the number on the card, and we come back and we ask the child, when I was gone, did you peek? And then the 80% of kids said, no, I did not peek. So this is a very typical finding without any kind of manipulation about the context. And then the question is, before we ask the question, when I was gone, did you peek? If we talk to them about how important it is to tell the truth, and would the child kind of buy our argument and then tell us the truth? It turns out it's totally a waste of the time. There's no change whatsoever. So we tried all sorts of ways to talk about how important it is in very, very child-friendly way or very religious way. It doesn't matter. No matter how you talk to the kids, they lie. And so the moral discussion doesn't work. Okay, what about just ask children to promise to tell the truth? And to our surprise, there's significant reduction in lie telling. So, and this is consistent across the world. So we don't know why, because a lot of kids in our study do not know what a promise is. Because we give them a test about, tell me what is a promise. We give them examples of promise, ask them to identify what it is. Some of them have no idea. However, we just simply ask them, would you promise me that you are going to tell me the truth? And children are more likely to tell you the truth. So, which is very strange. So we now know, so corporate promise doesn't work, moral discussion doesn't work, but promise making somehow increase children's honesty. And then the next one we looked at is whether or not children seeing a peer who has told the truth about his or her transgression, would that have any impact on the child's own lying behavior? And turns out modeling is good. So this is control as typical. So these are all 5, 6-year-olds. And if you show another child who actually cheated in the game, but told the truth about that, and was given a physical reward for being honest, no problem. So the child lying drops down significantly. And if you do not use physical reward, just simply praise the child, the other child, the model child, for being honest, again, you get the reduction in lying. So modeling seems to be working. And then, what about moral storytelling? Would it be useful? So, and then we recently published this paper, and so in this study, we did quite a many year study because it's a lot of participants involved. So the control condition is tortoise and hare. So this is the moral story, but does not intend to promote honesty. So we use this as a control condition. The kids are, again, 5, 6 years of age. And the lying rate is about 70%, 68% to be exact. So this is the bottom line. So this is the baseline. So the question is, when we tell them the boy who cried wolf, would children more likely to tell the truth about their transgression? So what is your guess? Because this is an important story, because I'm using not Disney's story. I'm using the original story, which actually the boy died. The boy that was, the real, it's a real story, so the boy actually was eaten up by the wolf. So the question is, what do you think? Were the kids more likely to lie or less likely to lie? Raise your hand if the children are going to be more honest, if you think. Well, you guys are wrong. So there's no change. So kids somehow is not sensitive to the story, the moral of the story. And what about Pinocchio? Pinocchio is different from the boy who cried wolf, because Pinocchio's story says if you lie, something immediately bad is going to happen to you. So we thought this could be useful, but turned out that's not useful. And then the only thing that's useful is the George Washington story, which you should know. The Canadians don't know, so I have to tell them a story. But I hope you know the story. And of course, it's a made-up story. But turns out only the George Washington story that it has truth-promoting effect. Okay? So why is that? So our theory was that the reason for the George Washington story to be somewhat truth-promoting is because it has a positive messaging. Do you remember the message? Is that I would rather have an honest boy than 1,000 cherry trees. You guys all forgot about this. Okay, and this is a very, very positive message. So we thought that must be the case. So what we did was we changed the story so that to make it have a negative message. In the new story, we called George Washington Story 2, in which George Washington actually lied and was caught by his father, and his father scolded him for lying. What happened? Children now becoming more likely to lie than before. So as you can tell, so the positive messaging promotes truth-telling, but negative messaging somehow promotes does not promote truth-telling. So we thought, wow, this is great. This is a good business-making, money-making scheme that came to my mind. So I hired a English literature major undergrad and an artist who also is in our art school. So we put them together to come up with a super story, we call it. In the super story, we had basically all the elements of the boy who cried wolf, Pinocchio, and the positive George Washington story. We put them together, come up with a very, very nice story, and with very, very well illustrated book, and then we try it out with the kids. And for this super story, with this positive and negative message together, we got nothing. So that's why I'm still poor. So anyhow, so moral story seems to be truth promoting, honesty promoting. However, what you need is a positive message, not a negative message. Now, so next question is, why do children tell lies? One reason I believe children tell lies is because they want to protect themselves. Sometimes they cannot help themselves for transgression. The situation is so tempting, they just cannot help to peek, to cheat, and things. And sometimes they just want to gain something. But then they have done something wrong. So they try to avoid their being punished by adults. So that's why they tell lies. And this developmental change really reflects the children's intention to avoid punishment. The reason I'm saying this is in some of the studies we've done, we actually do not entice children with any kind of prizes. And still, children still would peek, and they still would lie. So I think self-protection probably is one of the primary reasons children tell lies. And the second reason is children tell lies to win competition just like we do, just like chimps do, monkeys do. And I think the competition and gaining resources is very important for them. So let me give you an example. So this is the same game that we used for theory mind training. So this will give you a sense of how the study is done. And again, we got ethics approval for that.
The Discovery of Lying study. The study is conducted over a 10-day period, and this is Tong Tong's first day. The researcher asks him to choose his favorite candy.
Then she explains the rules of the game. He must hide a candy in one of the 3 cups. If Uncle finds the candy, he gets to eat it. If he can't, then Tang Tang gets the candy. The game is in full swing. Kang Lee covers his eyes and Tang Tang hides the candy. When Lee asks, "Where's the candy?" Tang Tang readily points to the cup where he hid it. He keeps giving away his favorite candy because he's incapable of telling a lie. After 10 trials, it's time to call it a day. And Tang Tang gets a sticker for his effort. This is day 3 for Tang Tang. He looks wistfully at the candy. Telling a lie is actually a very complex affair. For Tang Tang to lie, he first has to inhibit the truth. Then he has to know that what he knows is something that Lee doesn't. He has to hold the truth in his mind while he invents a lie. This ability signals a crucial milestone in a child's development. Clearly, Tang Tang isn't there yet. Tang Tang has now been playing the game for 5 days. The first glimmer of a strategy appears when he covers the cup with his hand as if to hide the candy. But he still can't refrain from telling the truth.
I gained a lot of weight
The next time when Lee asks where
for
the
doing
candy
this study.
is, he wavers. Something is beginning to stir. Will he actually figure out how to deceive Lee? He points to a cup. It's empty. He's won the candy this time. The look of triumph is unmistakable.
So this is a 3-year-old, and takes about 10 days for him to learn how to tell lies. And we basically did this short-term longitudinal study. It's just published. And then we tracked them for 10 days. And interestingly, so there are 3 groups of kids. One group of kids who the first day they already are doing it, but at a low level, so 30% of the time. And there are 2 other groups of kids who actually cannot lie at all. And then, however, the second group quickly learned how to lie. But the third group just kind of learning slowly with time. And turns out these 2 groups, kids, have significantly higher theory mind and executive functioning abilities than this group. So this is another a set of data to show that theory mind and executive functioning play a very, very important role in engendering children to tell lies. So now, there's third reason that children lie. That is to minimize losses and maximizing gains. So their decision to lie is very tactical. So this is the question that has been asked in the developmental literature and in the primatology literature. And then we tried various ways to answer this question. I think we finally got to the point that we can answer the question with some confidence. So in this study, what we did, basically we want to give children a choice to make a decision to lie or not to lie. So how do we do it? It's pretty simple. So similar kind of peaking paradigm, but instead of getting a prize, if they peak, they lie, they get $2. Okay? But if they tell the truth, confess about their peaking, they got nothing. So think about this. What would you do? Of course, tell a lie, which is totally true. So they tell a lie. So this is a typical 5, 6-year-olds. So they will lie because there's money to be gained, and there's no money to be gained at all if you're honest. The question is, if I increased the payoff for truth-telling, now it's $2 for truth-telling and $2 for lying, what would you do, right? So now basically the exchange rate of lying and truth-telling is the same. So would you choose to be honest or lying? Well, most of the kids choose to lie because they cheated. So there's potential that they will be punished for their cheating. So the rational decision really is to lie, not to tell the truth. So then we increase the payoff to $3 truth and $2 lie telling. So now the truth telling is 1.5 times more than truth lying. And at this point, kids' decision is 50-50. And then you increase the payoff for truth telling to $5, which is 2.5 ratio. And then the majority of kids would choose truth telling. And so is when you increase the payoff to 4 times, right? And we have done additional studies to show it has nothing to do with this baseline $2. You can change this baseline. It's still children are thinking in a racial manner. So what I came up with this idea, there's so-called the little liar's theorem that they have when they make decision about lying. That is the value of lie equals to 1.5 the value of truth-telling. So the decision making is pretty simple. If the value of lie is greater than 1.5 the value of truth-telling, then lie. And otherwise, you tell the truth. So, and now, the next one is, are children poor liars? And can we adults easily detect their lies? So I know I didn't give you informed consent, but would you like to participate in a very little experiment? So I want you to judge 2 kids. Both of them, when we asked them, did you peek at the candy or at the toys? Both of them said no. Your task is very simple, to determine which child is lying, which child is telling the truth. Okay, so this is child number 1. Are you ready?
Did you peek? No.
And this is child number 2.
Did you peek? No.
So if you think child number 1 is lying, please raise your hand. Okay, so the majority of you. And the child number 2 apparently, okay, so this is about a third. A third of you said child number 2 is lying. Well, child number 2 is lying. Child number 1 is telling the truth. Okay, this is too brief. So let me give you one more example, okay? So this is child number 3. Are you ready? So this is child number 3, okay?
Did you peek at the prize?
So this is child number 4.
Did you peek at the prize?
Okay, if you think child number 3 is lying, please raise your hand. Twice now, okay? So only 2 of you. So do you think child number 4 is lying? Please raise your hand. Okay, and you're all wrong, basically. So he was good, And you're good too, yeah, you're good too. So 2 in a row. So child number 3 is lying, child number 4 is telling the truth. So we've been doing these studies with parents and adults from different walks of life, all over the place. But of course, we give them more opportunities. So we give them many, many videos, and then doing exactly the same kind of experiments. And so this is what we have found. So just remember, so if you are guessing you are performing at the chance level, that is your accuracy would be 50%. Just keep that in mind, okay? So let's start with undergrads and law school students. And they have very limited experience with kids. So can they detect children's lies? These are the kids from 3 years of age to 7 years of age. No, they cannot, right? So their performance is at the chance level, which is understandable because they have no experience with kids mostly. So, but what about social workers and child protection lawyers? They actually work with children for child protection purposes. So these are the people who actually are working with children on a daily basis. Can they detect children's lies? No, they cannot. Okay, so now we say, okay, maybe these are not the right people. We should look for the people who are law enforcement officers and judges because they deal with liars on a daily basis. So they should know. So can they detect children's lies? No, they cannot. So then, so when we show these results, and some parents said, well, we parents, we know when kids lie. We say, okay, so that we will show videos of other parents' kids to parents of similar ages. And their task simply is to judge whether or not a child's lying or not lying. So many, many videos. Can they detect children's lies? No, they cannot. So then some parents say, wow, they said, maybe I cannot detect other people's kids' lies, but I know my kids lied or not. We say, okay, so we invite them into the lab. We put them in the control room, and the kids were in one room, they are in the control room, so they would not know whether or not their child has peaked. But as soon as we ask the question, we let them look at the video. So that's live. And can they detect their own children's lies? No, they cannot. So as you can tell, children are really very, very good liars. And we adults just simply cannot tell whether or not they're lying. I'm talking about very young kids, 3 years to 7 years of age, okay? So there's no way, you can really know your child is lying. So now let me tell you a little bit about what's new in my lab. So basically that really drives me crazy, right? So the kids are so good at lying, and we have no way of knowing they are lying. So there are two questions that came to my mind. Number one is, but if lying is so easy, and why would our kids not lie more often? And why we adults do not lie more often, right? So that question really bugs me. So how do I answer this question? So I use a neuroimaging method. So we're using the so-called near-infrared spectroscopy because it's a very portable and insensitive to motion most of the time. And you can do somewhat naturalistic lying studies in the lab or in the schoolroom, or you actually can walk around on the street with this near-infrared imaging system. So, and then you can see when people are lying spontaneously, what happens in the brain. But this thing, we just got started for the last 4 or 5 years, actually. We have published only a few studies. It's very difficult to do. However, these are the preliminary findings we can tell you about. Number one is lying actually involves greater frontal neural activities than truth-telling. So that actually takes away quite a bit of neural resources to tell lies than tell the truth. So that's number one. Number two is lying actually disrupts frontal functional neural connectivities. I think so somehow there is neural cost to telling lies than telling the truth. So it's just easier, simpler to tell the truth than lying. So I think there must be some kind of understanding or mechanism underlying our decision to lie that is, well, lying is not worth it because it's costly at the neural level. So that's one of the things we thought that could be the case. Another thing that's really interesting, we only have found with adults, but not with kids, and only looked at the reward system in the frontal cortex, but not using fMRI, let's see, looking at something down below the cortex. So we don't know too much yet, but this is the beginning. That is, gains from lying apparently is perceived by adults to be less rewarding than gains through truth-telling, which is really interesting. So somehow there is internal value system that values gains, rewards, or money from truth-telling than from lying. So maybe these are the reasons internally or at the neural level that we make decisions more likely in favor of truth-telling than lying. But this is just the beginning of many years of work. But the pressing question for me really is we still need to find out whether or not children are lying for various practical and theoretical purposes. So in the last 4 or 5 years, we've been trying using computer vision to do this. So this is a system based upon Ekman's FACT system. That's the facial action unit system. So in the old days, you have to train someone to code videos of people telling lies, telling the truth, frame by frame. And it takes forever to code, and the reliability is low, and training costs a fortune. However, Marnie Bartlett at UC San Diego developed a system that using computer vision and machine learning, we are able now to basically decode facial expressions frame by frame, very, very fast. So live. So you can do it online and very in real time. And then simultaneously, you can produce all the action units that have been characterized by Ekman and Friesen. And on top of that, you can also directly detect facial expressions such as joy, happiness, anger, contempt, etc., all in the fly. So it's very, very fast, and you can run it. So because of this, then we now are able to basically decode the facial expressions of people when they are telling lies or telling the truth. And with that, so this is just a quick summary of the findings. There are still many papers to be written up and published, but we have published a few. So if you're interested, you can go back to look at these 2 papers specifically using this system. So automated decoding of facial expression along with the machine learning actually reveals deception in children and adults with high accuracy. So this is a good part. But during our research, we discovered that this statement is only true when children and adults display facial expressions. But most of the time, however, our participants or liars in real life do not show any facial expressions such as this. So this is my son. So, and this is what he lies, his facial expression looks like. So by looking at this, there's no way you can use that system to decode whether or not he's lying. So, and he's now 14, so this is when he was 12. So, and it's getting harder and harder for me to detect he's lying or not. So this is really arms race between him and me. So then I said, how do I figure out Nathan is lying or not? So this really, literally was my challenge. So I thought, what about facial blood flow? So we know that underneath our facial skin, there's a very rich network of blood vessels. And these blood vessels actually are controlled by the autonomous nerve system and actually vasomotor neurons from the brainstem. So this is beyond our conscious control. And on top of that, the face, unlike many other parts of our body, actually are controlled by the sympathetic and parasympathetic vasomotor neurons differently in different parts of the face. So when you look at the facial blood flow, which is controlled by these vasomotor neurons, you actually see a symphony of blood flow changes. They are all different depending on the situation, your emotion, or whether or not you're lying. So that's our hypothesis. So you say, wow, if we can extract facial blood flow from this face, that would be great. But unfortunately, that there are no tools available at that time, and except for one thing that's called the Doppler, laser Doppler system, which is $20,000 a piece, and they only can detect facial blood flow change in one spot of your face. So I just couldn't afford that. And if I had an NIH or some other money, maybe I could do it. So I said, let's do something different. So turned out we could do it using a regular video camera everywhere that you have, like in your iPhone. So in your iPhone, your video camera, as long as it's 30 frames per second, we are able to extract facial blood flows. And we call this transdermal optical imaging. So why it can be done? And turns out our facial skin is translucent, not really. So when light comes to your face, it does not stop right there and reflect. It penetrates through your epidermis and hit the your melanin tissues or your hemoglobin tissues and bounce back. So if I pick up all the information from the reflection, and as long as I can strip away some of the irrelevant information, I actually could get the facial blood flow data from the face remotely and non-invasively and using a regular optical camera. And this is exactly what we've done. So basically the first, so each frame, so for example, Apple, the default setting is 30 frames per second. So for each second, you have 30 frames image. So by using our transdermal optical imaging, you actually can go through frame by frame of the face and get rid of some of the irrelevant information, such as melanin information, and you just keep the hemoglobin concentration information on the face, and that's what you see. But then you can stitch this all the frames together. Now you can see a video. And so this is Nathan's facial blood flow with time. And you actually, if you're familiar with facial blood flow, you actually can see his breathing, his heart rate by just looking at this frame, okay? So, and then now having this, that opens up many, many possibilities for us to reveal children's and adults' lying. And so this technology allows us actually to discover a phenomenon we call the Pinocchio effect. So not this Pinocchio effect, but this Pinocchio effect. That is when people lie, and this is not general, so in one specific situation, actually lying about pain, and so what happens is the blood flow on the cheek decreases and blood flow on the nose increases. So this is the data that is under review. So this is, we are using Bayesian machine learning method to reveal this fact by extracting facial blood flow from the entire face. Okay, I will come back to answer the question. Let me finish this. So, and now, but what happened before? You saw my son's image, the video. That takes hours to process using MATLAB. So that was not practical enough. So the University of Toronto told me, said, Kang, why don't you? This is a great technology. Why don't you find someone to invest and start a startup company? I said that's a great idea. That can fund my research as well. So we actually start up a new startup company called the Neurologics AI. So we now actually have developed a software that is sitting on your machine, mainly now the iOS, so in your iPhone, that immediately extract the facial blood flow from different parts of your face and send the data up to the cloud. And then we can analyze it and send back the results. So this is one we call the deep affects. And we now are able to use deep affects to reveal blood flow as well as emotion in real time. And so these are the things we are able to do right now. So we can extract heart rate, which the accuracy is better than Fitbit, 99.89%. So breathing, we can do 90%. Blood pressure, we are about 90%, which is still almost FDA standards. If we reach FDA standard, then we can actually get FDA approval, and we can turn our cell phone into a medical device in the hospital or use at home. But right now, we're half there because our diastolic is already there, but our systolic still needs some time to get there. We just need a lot of data. Our stress, we can measure stress based upon heart rate variability that is widely used in the literature, and our Pearson correlation now is 0.94 within, if you give me 2 minutes. And our Pearson correlation would be 0.92 if you only have 30 seconds. So we can measure stress using your phone as well. And also we can detect emotions, positive, negative, and neutral with 93% accuracy when your face is neutral. So that's the key. So you don't have to show facial expressions. We can detect your internal emotional states. And on top of that, we can detect many many internal emotions. For example, this is when you are looking at a disgusting image, that is what your facial blood flow looks like in different parts of your face. So this paper is under review right now. So they're all using machine learning, deep learning to achieve this. So now we have this tool. What can we do with this? The first thing would come to your mind would be say, hey, now we can create a new lie detector and to catch liars in children and in adults. But we decided probably that's not a good idea. So the first thing we are developing is really a health app. So we are basically now, so on my phone, I actually have one that measures only heart rate and blood pressure. I haven't really updated to actually have another app we can do stress as well. But these are all beta versions. So we are going to release them for free next year. So what do we do with this? So I have 3 projects that's currently happening. I'm sorry, being the roadblock between you and the lunch. So the project number 1, I call the project parents. So my parents live in China. I live in Toronto. So I Skype them every night. But sometimes, I just want to know what's going on with them, not just by verbal communication, but I want to know really their physical and psychological state. So I actually can overlay our app so that I can tell their heart rate, their blood pressure, their stress, and their mood, but more importantly, whether or not they are experiencing pain. Well, I told them I have this app, but sometimes they do not want to tell me that they are suffering from pain. They have back pain. So both of them have back pain. And they don't want to tell me because they don't want me to worry. But I want to know. So I turn this on. So that's called the Project Parents. I'm getting there. So it's still a lot of development because I'm using a third-party app. So, but there are other things you can do with this, as it turns out. So for example, let me show you something really cool. So this is, the music coming out of my dad's facial blood flow. And what I'm looking for is whether or not he has arrhythmia. And that music you just listened to means he has no problem, no arrhythmia. So this one does. So how did we do it? It's very simple. Just took the biosignals from the face, convert that into a MIDI signal, and then from MIDI comes out, you use a regular media player to play it. So why I'm doing this? Because then I can let my parents decide whether or not they should call a doctor. So I thought this is, in the future, of course, you can use this to detect people lying or not, because you can use your iPhone and have your earphone here, listen to people's facial blood flow and know whether or not they are lying. Anyhow, so this is I call the Project Parents, mostly for the benefit of myself and my parents, hopefully other people's parents. And the next one is called, so what we did was we discovered we can actually go back in history as long as you have good videos to extract similar kind of information, heart rate, stress, blood pressure, and stuff. So we went back as far as Bill Clinton. It was these VHS video standards, so very, very noisy, but we were able to extract that. We can also extract the OJs, TV interviews, and then more recently, we were able to extract, we can overlay our program. So we can overlay the video with our app, and we can simultaneously pick up, So we can simultaneously pick up the heart rate, blood pressure, stress, emotion of these 2 candidates, right? So that leads me to studies about lying. So one project I'm working on is to reanalyze all the video data we have. We call the Project Kids, originally named Project Nathan. So because he was my first participant in that Pinocchio study, so he was 3 years of age, and then he's continued to be the participant in all my lying studies. So I want to be able to track how his lying ability changes or how his facial blood flow changes. We call the Project Kids. So we reanalyze the data to see whether or not we can replicate the Pinocchio effect with children's lying in other situations. So another thing I just started last week is called Project Trump. But it's not really about a political statement. It's really a scientific endeavor, actually. So because we discovered that sometimes in order to detect lies better, you have to know a person. So the more you know one person, the better your ability is going to be to detect that person's lies. So there's no universal lie detector, but there's likely an individual-based lie detector. Because of this, so we looked for people we can use as our participant to study. And it's all very costly, time-consuming. And then it hit us that Trump has so many videos out there. These videos are actually, you can verify whether or not he was lying or was telling truth. I'm not talking about after he became the president, but before that, because he was involved in so many lawsuits. And in the United States, but not in Canada, you actually, once you do a deposition, and you actually have to upload, you're allowed to upload all the depositions on the internet. So you can download them easily and then analyze them easily. So which is our project. So then we have to go back and check his statements against the real facts to see when he's lying, when he's not lying. So this is really going to be a very interesting project. And I feel sorry for my postdoc. So she's going to be stuck with his videos for many, many years to come. Anyhow, so thank you very much for your attention.